A lot of credit for my Spider-Man fandom goes back to the 2002 film starring Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. 20 years later, we live in a different era for heroes. Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland have all starred in their own iterations of Spider-Man movies with varying success, but it took video gaming a bit longer to return to form. Ratchet & Clank makers Insomniac released Marvel's Spider-Man for the PS4 in 2018, restoring balance with the first good video game incarnation of Spidey since 2004. This is that game's sequel, released on the 20th of October 2023 as a PlayStation 5 exclusive. In short, this is an open-world RPG bringing both Spider-Men together to battle a new threat that's arrived in the Big Apple. This game also continues the stories of Peter and Miles that began in Marvel's Spider-Man and Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, respectively. This story opens with a great recap if you haven't played those games, under the guise of Peter helping Miles psych himself up to write his college entrance essay. The plot then proceeds to the tutorial as both Spideys deal with Sandman. This launches players into the game in a seriously impressive manner, and the opener against Sandman has everything you could wish for in a fight. The cinematics are damn impressive, the quips and sarcasm are frequent, and the threat feels adequate. What's evident very quickly is the emphasis put on the spectacle of combat, while the interactions between both protagonists show that Miles is intended to be a much more mature version of himself than we have seen previously. He and Peter keep trading saves of each other during this opening showdown, and it's the perfect precursor to the rest of the game. Shortly after this, you start to see the troubles each man has in their personal lives. Miles' mother is starting to date, and he's struggling to manage his academic life and his responsibilities as Spider-Man. Meanwhile, Peter is dealing with mounting bills, getting fired, and the return of an old friend. This dual protagonist approach covers a large chunk of relatability for this game's player base. Everyone's feeling the pinch right now, and seeing Peter's mortgage bill will likely hit home for any grown-ups in the audience, hoping inflation and interest rates drop, and drop quickly. Meanwhile, Miles represents the younger fans, who struggle with high school, relationships, and messy familial entanglements. What interrupts their mundane, everyday problems is a new group of bad guys who free Scorpion and Mr. Negative during a prison transfer. This group and their leader seem to be on some sort of hunt, and both Miles and Pete will need all their new tech and abilities to stand up and defend New York. There's a strong gravitas around all of the characters here, with Peter and Miles at times playing the sarcastic nerd, and at other times the sensitive and empathetic hero. What's important to the established characters like these Spider-Men is their surrounding cast. Peter's confidants include characters like MJ, who's driven, purposeful, and measured, and Harry, reimagined here to be a charismatic and reckless individual despite his illness. This is perfectly encapsulated during a mission where the three of them enjoy a carnival at Coney Island. This entire sequence was one big main mission, and it covers a series of minigames, some foreshadowing, and some sweet and sincere moments. Without a doubt, this is one of the very best examples of interjecting a change of pace into a title without killing a player's enjoyment in the process. Miles' friend and potential love interest Hailey's inclusion is a strong plus. Much like how I'd never heard Arabic voice acting before I played Assassin's Creed Mirage, I've never seen signing so well done and so prevalent in a game until Miles Morales, and it's featured more heavily here. There's even a mission where you walk around an area of the city as Hailey, and the audio in the game becomes all but muted. She's a well-utilised character that works well in Miles' orbit. The villain redemption arc later in the game also contributes strongly to Miles' wise beyond his years status. Surprisingly, it's familiar face Ganke who stands out as flawed here, as he fills the traditional sidekick role in a way that, while useful, sort of pushes him into a cliché that reduces his visibility and his influence as an individual. There are other characters here who weave in and out of the story, and in the side activities, such as Danica and Miles' uncle Aaron. These are commonly utilised in audio format to provide flavour while you're swinging through the city. Speaking of swinging through the city, this is an open world and you can run, swing, propel, and glide your way through New York. I don't say lightly that this game's traversal and movement are so excellent that my impatience to reach my goal quickly never overtook my desire to travel around the city manually. Fast travel takes literal seconds in this game, and the loading for this is basically non-existent, yet I never wanted to deprive myself of the fun you have while doing this on web. The PS4 Spider-Man game did this too, but it had some moments where you could swing and release, and then you'd feel like you were killing your momentum in the air, having to fall lifelessly until you could swing again. The new glide feature here resolves this, and it takes traversal to a whole new level. You weave this naturally into your swinging, and you can use air currents between buildings to generate some serious momentum. Momentum is the key word too, as that's what you really feel as you play. You sense the very bottom of the arcs as you swing, and you make more arcing dives while gliding to build up speed. No game comes anywhere near to how this feels when you're weaving in between skyscrapers and being whipped along by air currents in the city. This is the gameplay system that makes the Spider-Man games stand out, not just as fun and exciting superhero RPGs, but as examples of realized potential for the current generation of console hardware. As you swing between buildings and zoom across the water, you'll see missions on your map. I found this game to be very distracting in a good way. I'd be happily heading towards a main story mission, only to see a crime or a side activity pop up just a little bit out of the way. I could never resist banking hard and heading to take care of these before rushing back to the main story. And I do mean rushing. This game made me want to keep playing the main missions. It made me want to play some of Miles' side missions where he deals with mundane high school problems. And it made me want to play Pete's kind of science-themed minigames. These should feel like generic open-world activities that I'm just systematically checking off, but I felt such a strong level of enjoyment in this game overall really, that I didn't mind doing these. These give you tokens and parts that you can use to upgrade the gadgets and suits that our Spider-Men use, and this leads me very nicely onto progression. Miles and Peter share a level and the game has 3 skill trees. One for Miles, one's for Peter, and one that's a shared tree. Due to the differences in their combat abilities, these are all necessary and couldn't have been conflated into a single tree. This gets the balance right between complexity and the feeling of meaningful improvements to each character. This certainly could have been made deeper, but the game is working hard to be accessible, and when I look back, overcomplicating these would have been a mistake. Alongside skills you have gadgets, which are mostly used to incapacitate or otherwise occupy your foes. These can be upgraded and improved as you progress. There's also suit powers, which act more like passive upgrades to damage, focus and health. These 3 avenues of progression include most of the gameplay relevant ones, and your big abilities tend to be locked behind story progress. There's a really good balance between the rate at which you get XP and the rate at which the story gives you new abilities. You'll always have something to upgrade or unlock if you just keep playing the game, even if at times these are new suits rather than gameplay affecting abilities. Combat is similar to the previous games, but both heroes do have some new moves. Peter's style focuses on finesse until the very late game, taking down single targets quickly with precision, while Miles has his venom powers that make him a bit more splashy. As a result, I did like Miles' moveset better. He has more AoE options early on, and that helps clear out the combat-based activities faster. Moment-to-moment battling is very strong, and it sees you weave normal hits with dodges and parries into a fast-paced flurry of acrobatics and spectacle-worthy moments. With the new abilities and gadgets thrown in, you can button mash and still feel very good about playing the game. Or you can get really particular about the combat and start showing off like this is a Devil May Cry title. There's such an effortless feel to this that it helps lift the combat above what is actually a very simple system on paper. Encounters do start to feel repetitive towards the end. There are certain enemies that you can only defeat in certain ways or that you really need to use your finishes on, but this doesn't massively dent the enjoyment you get from this. I personally found that switching between Peter and Miles helped stave off this feeling right until I was just ready to put this game down for good. One new element I do want to single out for praise is the addition of the game's webline. This allows you to create your own tightropes above your enemy's head and prep areas for stealth kills. I expected this system to have more limitations than it did, and you can create a network of these to clear entire compounds from stealth if you wish. Where the game really excels is the spectacle and cinematography. From the cutscenes to the boss battles, everything about this feels like it has a very high production value. I might have seen better character models in other games on PC, but not by much. This is a showcase of what we were sold when the PS5 and Xbox Series were talked about as game-changing, or at least they are in terms of this spectacle. Other aspects of this game do feel a bit more grounded. I've already mentioned open world activities, but there's also the vestige of generic enemies that feel like tropes. Of course, our heroes are designed to be the true focal point, but there's that been there, done that feeling in the non-boss enemy design. When everything in this game comes together, there are truly moments where other games can't compare, and this is backed by a strong level of mission diversity, from the aforementioned carnival minigames.
You two go get declared soulmates. I'm gonna fly solo. See if I give off Casanova vibes. Good luck.
To Miles' trippy rhythm-based DJ set. There's also a mission with Black Cat that is as irreverent as it is excellent, and sees Miles chase Felicia through the city, jumping through magic portals. This concludes with a Miles and Felicia team-up against an army of hunters, and were it not for the time I spent playing Insomniac's Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, I would have been practically enamoured with this entire sequence. Technically, this was a strong showing in terms of stability and frame rate. The PS5 handles everything here admirably, and this does feel impressive with the game's scope and movement speed. I did spot a few weird glitches, and there are times when the subtitles are far ahead of the spoken dialogue.
Hey. We'll put Lee back where he belongs. Promise. Don't leave me hanging.
But these are quickly overshadowed by the excellence everywhere else. The biggest issue I did have involved contextual actions. There were multiple occasions throughout the game's 20-hour runtime where triggers to allow certain actions either failed or failed to materialize. A particularly notable one was during a short section where you play as Haley. You're supposed to be able to walk across a wooden plank, and she just never transitioned into the animation. These are usually fixed by reloading a checkpoint, but there were a handful of these throughout the game that put blemishes on what would otherwise be a solid outing. While I'm on the subject of context, the haptic triggers also get some use here, and they're put to work in more than the usual contextual opening of things. Yes, you do use these to break open rocks, but the pressure centers on the trigger are used to solve some puzzles, and I do like these are getting more utilization as the PS5 console ages. In terms of raw visuals, I'm going to throw up some comparisons on screen from the other Spider-Man games here. The city of New York looks great, but what I think helped was the manner in which Insomniac managed to vary the environments in a way that a lot of other games set primarily in urban environments don't. Take this Hunter compound for example. There's such a wilderness feel to it that you do sort of forget that you're in the city. The examples of this do get even more diverse later on, but that footage is very close to spoiler territory and is not being shown here. It really is a combination of the little details that add up to make this great. From the addition of animations that could have easily been skipped, like the sign language and where Harry leans against a desk, or the fact that the I/O on the back of these computers is visible. At least Pete's PC at home has a dedicated GPU. This game also has a ton of suit options, and these now come with different palette swaps to unlock too, so there's plenty of customization options for you to choose from. You can unlock these using collectibles, and some are given as rewards for finishing certain quest or quest chains. Finally, this game did include sections where you play as MJ. These were something I really didn't like in the original game, as you failed the moment she was spotted, and these really ground the game's pacing to a halt. Here you do have to play as MJ again, but she's got a stun gun now, and somehow that fixed all of the problems that I had with these before. Well, almost all of them. I really, really hate this jumper. As I start approaching a conclusion, I want to say again that what stands out here is the attention to detail, and the overall quality of this product. I rarely like using words such as amazing or fantastic to describe games or mechanics within games. I feel that these are often overused and their meaning is devalued, particularly in our modern society that is always searching for an attention-grabbing headline or a reaction-invoking article. This kind of thing is also the reason that this review isn't just called Swinging is Amazing or, well, this. There's an unnecessary amount of loaded implication in things like this that I'm trying to avoid. So then we come to the final question. What makes this game great? Is it the very strong mom energy? Is it the angst of conflicted teens? Is it the entirely relatable real-world problems? Is it blondes in latex? Is it middle-class redheads wearing bad jumpers? No. What really makes this game tick is the writing. Yes, the writing is dripping with nerd energy, but it's just so true to what the essence of Spider-Man is. Maybe it's just me projecting, but this throughout is excellent and blends quips and sarcasm in a way that feels very natural. There was a particular line that was just offhandedly said during a mission that had me laughing out loud during an otherwise very serious compound infiltration.
Hunts what man fears most. That's all you need to know.
Oh, so he's hunting failure? Intimacy? Clowns! It's clowns, isn't it? Good riddance, I say.
Make no mistake, while I may not be able to verbalize the sentiment well, this game is relentlessly impressive on all fronts, and it's not too often that I get to say that. Value is, of course, very subjective, but on a personal level, I did not need Spider-Man 2 to drag out beyond its current runtime, and I didn't need the game to completely eviscerate its world or mechanics to deliver an engaging sequel. This is entirely a result of balance. It's the carefully weighted understanding of how to find the right mix of accessibility and challenge, of how to find the right blend of appeal that engages older fans and younger fans. It's about finding the right elements that prove that this game is forward-thinking without leaving the old guard behind. I say this only because this IP once used it so liberally, but this really is a Spider-Man game that deserves to be called amazing.